I've made more of this style of box than I care to remember, and I've done 2 videos on making them from bits of scrap, and one with hand tools, one with machine tools. I thought I'd show another set of tools and also an upcycle on these old kitchen Drawfronts. So I'm going to use a biscuit jointer. It's quite a professional tool, the pillar drill and the Chopsaw. So if you're a hand tool guy, go look at one of the other ones first. And I've been using just metal tube, but I'm going to use dowl and show how to thin it down at the end. That bit's too short. You know, I might make a box which matches that handle. So I'm just going to use a bit of old broomstick or something. So this should be much quicker. So to minimise cutting, the length of the whole box will be the length of a whole drawer front. So I've got all that detail all the way around. And then the ends, I'm going to use segment from that one. So I'll have one end, the other end, and chop that to match the width of the board. So there won't be much measuring. So I want to set this to cut the same width as the board. We've got this sliding end stop, which I move in so that when that's touching the blade, the end stop is in. And it's going to be noisy, so I'll talk you through what the cuts will be. Flip the stop up, remove the end. Spin it round, drop the stop, and then that will cut one end width. And then I can take another end width off, or I might repeat, chop that end off and then spin. Scheme is one drawer makes a side, then that will be inset a little bit from the base, one on the end. So the next cut is to get this end correct. Start with the length of one of these. I want to take off 2 of these. The best way to do it is just prop those in there, and then so the first cut will be just a little trim to get the end square and neat. Then flip it round against the stop plus the 2 sides, cut it through, and then that should be bang on what I need. So we now have the wobbly wood issues. So this one is twisted, so it rocks. That way up it sits a bit more solid. So I think I'm going to make that the inside so it sits nice and flat. These have got a bevel on them, so they won't necessarily stand upright. But if I push it against there, I can drive the biscuit jointer into it. So the decision is whether I have that gap in the assembly underneath, or whether I'm going to raise the inside of the box up. And I think I'm going to raise the inside of the box up on a little spacer, because that's a nice technique to demonstrate. So often I'll just use a little bit of hardboard or something just to bring things up a tiny bit, to even the gaps up. I'm going to use a really big spacer this time, because for what the box is going to be used for, having it a little bit shallower won't matter, and it'll be really clear what's going on. So I'm going to mark where that goes, and then it's sitting on this spacer, so I know it's going to be in that area is where the end comes in. We've got, this is where the base comes in, we've got these, which will line up on the end. And I'll put a mark where that comes, and again down the other end. And now's the time to check whether the bevel on the end has made a difference. Whether they're going to be a little bit sticky outy or I want them a little bit in. And I think they're going to be a little bit sticky outy. And I think to make it look nice, I might set these in a little bit. Like really quite a little bit. So I think I might take that off the end to make it look nicer. And then it'll be a question of centering this on here and then attaching the other ends. We're using nice clean 18mm material, all this exact length stuff would apply. So we'll have the back, have one of these ends inset a little piece, and there's the base, and then another end inset a little piece, and this I can just jiggle around by eye to work out where that is, and it's there, and we put a couple of marks in which locate two lines, and then they will line up. So because of the bevel you can see how much that's leaning over, so I will use a T-square to draw a line up the back. One's right, one's wrong. So rub out the old ones. So I'm going to keep the dark brown up the top. That's where they were attached to drawer boxes that I've used elsewhere. There's videos on that as well. So these end pieces, I'll mark where the floor level goes. The spacer, and then that on top. That one the other way around. So that's the full height, and then the spacer. So here's the biscuit cutter, and this machine's got a spinning blade, and as I push it in, out pops the blade and carves a slot. And then in the slot goes one of these, what's called a biscuit. So it'll be half in one, half in the other glued, and it locates it. Loose tenon is another name for it. So I set the tool to the depth I need for a number 10, and then decide where to put it. And I'm just going to take the length of that as a guide. So I have one in there, I have one in here, and the lefty righty precision doesn't have to be bang on, which is one of the nice things about this tool. Another there, another there, gap in the middle, and I know in the middle of that is where it's going to go. And if I was marking this up a little more consistently, because I had a lot of stuff going on, and I might draw an arrow where the biscuit's going to go in. So this will get 2, 4, 5, 6. That's where the slots need to go. Spacer, lefty righty lining up on the ends. There's an arrow, mark, dust extractor. you can see how if you've got a big batch of these, it could be jib jib and jib jib, and just keep going, keep going, keep going. Before you know it, you've made a dozen boxes. And you're doing 2, you're doing 20. It's not so much longer for 20. I'm running out of time today, but you can just pop the biscuits in. You can decide which side you're going to do it. And then let's get the left and right correct. It just pops on top there. If there was some glue in there, that wouldn't come off again. So biscuit, biscuit. On it goes. Biscuit. In it goes. Biscuit on that end. In it goes. And I'm going to do biscuits in that joint, but I'm going to save that for another day. But yeah, that's well on the way. Flip it up. See where this offset is here. So it's going to sit on its edges and not on the bottom. I have such a thing about not measuring that I'm using this in a slightly unconventional way by just indexing it off the base plate the whole time. For doing more unusual stuff, I do get the fence. I do get the kind of the depth fence out. Then you can kind of hook it over the side of things, and you can set that quite precisely, especially if you set that off, you know, for templates. So if you know you want it to be that millimeters deep. The other thing this does is you can get it in at an angle as well. So you can do, 45 degrees or 30 or 14 or 53. So you can set it very, very precisely. So it's a great tool. This is a very good one. Obviously cheaper ones are available. And I think if you're using this indexing trick, you don't necessarily need the good one that's got all of this precision. You can also get a router attachment that does this. So does the end fit? Because there's a bit of slop this way with these biscuits, I've set this one a little further back than it should be. So it's about, 4 millimeters or something. So this is, what can go wrong when you're trying to glue the thing up. So the slot there lines with that one, that one, that one. Up it comes, lovely, bit of a gap. Then you can hammer that tight. And then when I come to this end, missing a biscuit, so I've got a biscuit there, into there. You don't want to end up with a biscuit to biscuit glued. Oh no, I've got too many. So I'll pop that one in there, so that will lock on, twist in, and that is absolutely tight as. So a few more biscuit jointing tricks. These should be kept airtight, because if they get damp they swell and rock. If you get a dodgy one that won't go in, just a rubber mallet. And if it won't come out, just like I think these are called linesman's pliers, just a pair of pliers to get it out again. For gluing, I like to use a jar and a stick, then stir it and then load the glue in the slot. You can get injectors where you for batch work, but I've never made that quantity of stuff. For the handle there's kind of a height that normally looks about right, so Go a little higher. I've got plenty of wood. Go cut that. So I've got my mark approximately where I want it. So I'll put that to line up approximately where I want it. So I've no idea what those are in millimetres, but they are bang on the same. So in the other tote box builds I've showed sort of more rustic hand tool ways of shaping the ends, but we're going to do the cooking with gas version this time. So this is kind of the productivity step you get if you get a big extractor and you get some power tools. But it's obviously, you know, substantial investment. The tip here is don't even think of running one of these without one of those unless you're outdoors, because it just creates, you know, a big bucket of dust which it throws into the air. So this one, I mean, the disc needs changing, but it still does that. And obviously it'll do the same to your fingers, so very easy to end up with blood. It's spinning this way, so you work on this side where it's being forced down. Go that side and it'll flick up in your face. You can kind of freehand up in this area and it throws the dust that way, but really I'm wanting to work here where the dust goes down the hole. If I had my time again, I'd get a better one of these. So I used it once, put it away for months till I had the extractor, and then I burnt the motor out, put such a big motor on that this doesn't fold flat. But this has done a lot of work for me. This isn't exactly rigid, which means I don't end up with exactly 90 degrees, so it's not an engineering type precision, but for this kind of shaping, brilliant. So this flat belt part, usually called a linisher, I built this hood which lifts on and off so I could get a big dust extractor up the top, and then when the belt's fitted there's a brush. It brushes the dust off the belt to get caught up into there. So it's quite a big R&D thing to get that belt extracting nicely. Belt alignment is tricky, it ends up chewing the edges, and this isn't a good tool. So I tend to only put the belt on for special occasions, and it hasn't been on for a year or so. So my no measuring way of centering this is I put it right to one side, line the piece of paper up, draw a line, and if I fold that to the line, that is half of the gap. So if I put that mark there, move it up, then that should be the other half of the gap. And if the other end is the same, and then with my folded piece of paper mark the other end up at the same time, and then that centres that handle. How many millimetres? Don't know, don't care, no calculations. Measure twice, calculate 5 times, forget your birthday, or just fold a piece of paper up. So for doing the centre line for drilling, I'll do it once badly and then once well. So I'll hold the pencil like that, and then that gives me a line that distance from the edge. Turn it round, that gives me a line that distance from the edge, and the centre is in the middle there. So I might decide that that's the spot that I'm going for. So if I come down the other end, I'm just going to try and take a better guess. So that's my guess for where it is. Turn it around. I've now got a wider line. And then I can mark where the screw hole goes. This one, where the screw hole goes. Centre line. This a little bit further apart this time. Line them up. The other screw can go about there, I reckon. You really only had to mark one of these up. The screw holes are fairly approximate, and then I could have just drilled a stack. Yeah, let's play the game of precision. So that's where I'm going to drill all the way through the first time. I'll then turn it over, drill through to mark. So if this was at a steep angle and it's like that, when I drill through and mark, at least where it comes out of this one is where it goes into there. So I'll just tap that, open it up, and then that and that will be exactly the same. And then I'll drill that one through so the errors don't compound. These flutes will pull it up, and I wasn't holding it down firm enough, so it lifted. Clamping everything down is obviously better. The hole took a while to go through. It's trying to clear the waste and run out of flutes. So if it goes in and then out again, it throws the waste off and then can go through. So the second double hole doing the peck was quicker. So are we nearly there yet? Well, something else to talk about is this hasn't been glued yet, and as you can see, it's pretty solid. I can wobble it apart, but it's pretty solid. And a lot of projects I don't glue. I use sort of pocket hole screws that would then anchor all the pieces together, and then I could take it apart, paint different things, different colours, put them all back together again. But I'll show you. I remembered I promised the drill press, and this one's keeping it classy and kind of professional tools. So I'm going to use this piece of old broomstick. Doesn't look very promising, but just wait till it's painted. And I'm going to inset that into the handle about that depth. And you can see the handle here, it's very nearly the width of that. So drilling a big hole that it sits in isn't going to work. So I'm going to show how to cut a shoulder on that to fit in. So these Forstner bits are an Adam Savage off Mythbusters top tip. Very nice, but for today, just an ordinary spade bit will do. So this decision is how much do I want left at the bottom of the hole, and I reckon about that amount. Don't care how many millimetres, just that amount. So the drill press has got a handle to go up and down, but there's also this depth stop that I can set, so that slides around. So the trick, if you've got an allergy to measuring, is wind that down until it touches the spacer, then set the depth stop. Then when I take the spacer out, that's where it stops. 2 or 20, it's not much different at time. This setup is a little bit more complicated because I will make that go down that hole. So to get dialed in, I'm going to use a piece that's the same size, and once I've got that right, I'll then do the proper one. And the trick is I push it into the bandsaw and then just keep cutting, and this is a stop that stops it going too far, so that's the depth. But I've got to get the fence in the right position this way to take enough off. So I'll do it, nudge it, nudge it, nudge it until I'm there. I don't have a precision dial, and I'm not measuring, I'm just going to do a little bit more, No measuring. Stick that down the hole, put a mark on it. That's how deep I want to go. Adjust the fence until that mark just disappears. dialed in where that's now quite a stiff fit. What I find most interesting is just how much sawdust just from doing that, because I haven't got the extractor running. So usually I'm sucking all of that around to the corner, and there's more on the floor as well. So I'm definitely going to run the extractor when I'm doing it properly. Extraction's a whole other topic, but for drilling there's quite a lot of waste there, and I've got this thing that I can manoeuvre to exactly where I want it for sucking waste up. Now the how long the handle question. So that goes into there that far, and that's defined by this spacer that I put on the drill. So this needs to be all the way to the end, less one spacer one end, one spacer the other end. So if I set the chop saw up with that minus 2 of those, I should be alright. There's a reason I have a few of these lying around, because it is tricky to get it dialed in. What I should have noticed is I'm chewing that edge away on my test piece. I got a nice clean one this end that was my second go, but I'll show you why I've made a mess of the proper one. I'm going to have to redo it. And I've now added a second clamp and a second fence to make this wider, because what was happening was, as it came round, that gets thinner, and then that was going down the side of the fence because the stop was really narrow. So when I was doing another lap to clean it up, it was chewing that edge away. So I need to cut another one of these, go again. So that's up against the saw blade, slide the stop in, lock that. Now this one, if it's got a clean cut that end, I get it dialed in. So I can just prop that in place, so that's good for width.
For the glue, I buy in a large quantity and then decant into a little jar to use. I find these kebab skewers really handy, just for getting a little bit of glue where I want it. Give it a little wobble. And then ideally let it grab for a little bit before wiping it. Wipe the excess off. And in 10 minutes that would be really difficult to move in and out. That would be structural. There's a great line in Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance that before assembly be in a relaxed state. So I've had a cup of tea and I've got my head around this and everything is lined up ready to go. So A, B, B, and I need to decide on a strategy of what's going to go in what order. So I'm going to put all the biscuits in the base. I'm then going to put the little ends on, and then that will stop me ending up with this being out of alignment on the lefty-righty like I had on my dry run. I've got these here just in case I need to pull one out, start again. And I've got my mallet in case I need a bit of encouragement to go in. So I'm all ready to go. I'll show you putting one in, and then I'm going to turn the camera off and concentrate. So I get a little bit of glue on the kebab skewer into the slot, push it in, a little bit squeezes out, and then just repeat. So with the base all done, get it back A, B, B, and then get the ends in. So a little bit of glue down that slot, do the other one at the same time. A little bit of glue down that slot. A to A. Push that in. B to B. Push that in. So the final side to do, so get some glue down that slot. Glue down that slot. And then insert the biscuits, and we've got biscuits all the way around. And this should just snug neatly on top. Okay, that's in. And that's just pulled together by hand, nice and tight. It could have had a bit of encouragement with that, or it could have been pulled tight with, not that one, but yeah, something like that one on there, just to get it in. But just by hand, I pulled that tight enough. I really want to now get the paintbrush out, but I should leave that at least 10 minutes. So what I'm going to do is start looking at the next project, but that'll be another video. So painting I'm going to leave to your imagination, but I'll put 3 screws on there so I can use it as feet. So I can paint underneath, flip it over, paint the top. And then the handle I've put some blocks on, and that's on its own piece, so I can paint that separately, and that's going to be a different colour. So there's some completely fake painting. So that's one coat of the pale grey, followed by the dark grey around the outside, and then the pale on the inside. It gets a little bit messy around the edges because it's going to wet paint against wet paint. If I'm being greedy, you'll
impatient really. I expect tomorrow I'll come back and I'll do another coat. So this is the next day, and that's what it would have looked like unpainted. While I can live with a little bit of bleed where I was greedy painting kind of wet paint next to wet paint, I do think the colour would look much better with another coat. And the other thing is, while I don't think it should stand that high off the ground, I do think having some feet in just to lift it a little bit off the ground, because that's quite fragile, I think it would look nicer spaced up off the ground as well. So I might make just a couple of little feet to go on there as well. So these colours are Urban Slate and Dusky Gem. Gloves is my big tip. These are the feet, which I've just put on little blocks of wood so I can hold them. The paint will stick them together, but they'll hammer off. Having stuff on a board you can manoeuvre around is good. So I did both long sides and then the little ends, and then finally around the top. No masking tape. Hopefully I get a nice clean edge. And hopefully I'll be happy with that in a couple of days' time, so I'm going to be away for a bit. So I've taken the screws out, but the paint just glues it a little bit, but snaps undone. There's a little bit of an art to squeezing these through and finding the holes again, and there's a little bit of wiggle room. So I'll do the top one up not too tight. And then eyeball it. Just a little bit. And then I can put that one in. These are my screws that were feet while I was painting. My last job's to fit the feet. Put them right down the end. We're all done. One little detail that gives away it was a Drawfront, which is the hole there where the handle used to go through, but I quite like that. I'm pleased to have reused the Drawfronts for a start. Be careful not to get it dirty. The feature I most like is this triangle. That could have been a piece of cardboard. The paint would still have picked that out as a detail. I like it sitting on the feet, and hopefully that will have decades of use.